Hi, it's Jory with Tate in the Studio. Welcome back to another episode, and in today's video, I'll be showing you how I built this walnut coffee table. So I got a bunch of boards here. Now, the diameter of the coffee table is 30 inches, so most of these pieces, the rough width, I haven't planed them down or anything yet. They're probably about 32, 34, so I should have enough. But these were all offcuts from some longer boards that I had from some previous projects and tables, but I've got some staples that are in the side when it's at the lumber yard. I just want to make sure I take those out so they don't chip the blades. Now I've got this one piece that's got quite a bit of waning in it. That's this part here, just the curvature of the tree. I'll just cut it to a rough at about, I don't know, 32, something like that. And then left over I have, I don't know, about 17. So let me use that on maybe a cutting board or something down the road. But yeah, I'll just cut that one there. This one is 31, so it's good. Piece looks pretty good too. It's like a 36, so I'll just leave it as it is. There's no point in cutting it off. I can just see that there's a crack here. So I'll cut that back at about 32 and that'll completely cut out that crack. So I don't want it to split down the road, so yeah, just do that. And then this last piece I have, it's a pretty wide piece, but I don't want to have one giant wide piece and a bunch of narrower pieces. That'll just look goofy. So I'm gonna cut it down the center, but I do have a crack, so I just want to sort of cut that crack out, and then that'll leave me at about 6 inches on each. So yeah, it's like 12 inches, so it'll be like 5.5 or something like that. So yeah, just kind of working with the pieces I have. So might as well rip this first one down the middle since I'm at the table saw. So move some things around here. So I'll just do that and I'll cut it down, all the pieces, and I'll start milling it. So yeah, so enjoy the montage. So you can see me cutting that crack out of the center, and I just took off, it was about 3/4 of an inch in the middle, or 1/2 inch or something like that. But once that was done, I took it over to the miter saw, the different boards, and just cut those ends off. Now after I cut them, as I mentioned, I'm just jointing the boards. So I'm doing the face first, and then I flip it over or to the side, and I do the edge. After that's done, I just like to check square to make sure that I got a nice square edge, because otherwise if it's off slightly, you'll have a bit of a warped table. And I run it through the jointer, doing the 2 other sides, and it's flattened out nice and even. So I've got all the boards planed and jointed. So what I like to do is, I like to mark the way the rings are going. So then when I'm putting the table together, I know I want the rings to alternate up and down. Now the reason I do that is that if there's seasonal changes in the wood will cup this way in the direction that I did this little U shape. So if I orient all the boards in that same way, you might have this big bow in the table. So instead, if I alternate the pieces like that, the board or the table will remain relatively flat. One might cup up like a little bit, but it'll be pretty minor, and then the next one will go down, so that visually you won't see uneven surface. But if you didn't do that, they might be just like a 32nd of an inch each, but over the span of those 5 or 6 boards, that'll go up to almost 1/4 of an inch, so that could be visible. So it's just one of those small little minor things that you want to do. off camera, I ended up using the domino just to put some slots and some tenons into the sides of the boards. And I apply the glue, and once all that glue is applied, I just brush it out, and then I'm just clamping up the boards. Now, I like to use the domino, or if you have a biscuit joiner, that would work just fine. And it just helps keep those boards lined up so that they're nice and flat and we don't have any ridges. So I had this jig I made in the past. It's just essentially 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch MDF. I drilled a hole in the underside of the table. I measured it. So I just got a little shelf pin in here. And so I'm just gonna attach the router to here, and then that'll cut the circle, and then I'll just be able to cut it, get the round, and I'll use the jigsaw to cut it out more, and then I can use that router again to follow that flush trim bit, and it'll get an even circle. So I'll get started with that. Now I just run that router over, and I'm using a 1/4 inch spiral bit, and I find that it just cuts really evenly into the wood, and it's nice and even. You can see I have an overarm dust collector, and it's really helpful in this application, but you kind of got to adjust it every once in a while. So then I move on to the jigsaw here, and I'm just cutting it out once I got that groove started. And then once I finally cut that circle out completely, I just use that same 1/4 inch spiral flush trim bit, and I'm just running it around the edge to cut it off. After that, moving on to the sanding process, I started at 60 grit, worked my way up to 80 grit, 120, and then 150 grit. After that's done, I'm just running the router with a 1/8 round over bit over the edge, and then I just come back again with that sander and just take off that little bit of mark that's left over from the router. And then on to the finishing process, I apply some Danish oil, and then I work over to the Osmo hard wax oil for the final protective coats. So I'll roll on the 2 coats. I'll just sort of work my way around. And I find I'll do the top, and then once the roller is sort of that finish has been worked in, I'll then go to the edges and do that, because I've found if I do the edges with a roller full of finish, it sort of has a sometimes it can have some drip marks on the underside. So I just like to do it that way. That's what works for me. If you got a technique that works better than you, then by all means, but this works for me. Now you might see sometimes people take some finish and drizzle it on and then roll it out or spread it out. I actually suggest not doing that. What I've had happen in the past is I've put some on and I've let it sit too long, and there'll be like a little blotch mark where it soaks in more, just sort of sinks into the wood, and then the only way to get that out is to completely sand the top down and then reapply it. So if you do pour a little bit on, spread it out immediately so the finish doesn't have a chance to sit there. But, yeah, I'm just doing some even strokes, even pressure. You know, I'm not pushing too hard, but it should be spread out nice and evenly. I'll just finish going around the edges like I started before. Now, if for some reason I miss a little bit, that's okay. The second and the third pass or rolling or application, I guess, I'll catch that. So yeah, I just make sure I do it nice and even, and just kind of go over and, you know, do a thing and whatever. So yeah. Now finally, I'm just attaching the legs, and I'm just marking them out with a Sharpie here, and I like to come with a drill bit just to pre-drill them so it doesn't split the wood. And I'm just using some, I think 3/4 inch by number 8 screws. And that's pretty much the video. Thanks for watching to the end, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe and have a great rest of your day. Bye.